present. All councillors are in attendance tonight, so there are no apologies. The notice of webcasting, item 3, just to let you know, Mr Honeywell, and any of the people who have registered online to participate in the public forum, that these proceedings are broadcast live onto YouTube and recorded there for posterity, so there are legal consequences for comments that you make in the public domain. Are there any disclosures of interest? Surely any that there were would have been made at the last meeting, but maybe would need to be made again. Does anyone need to redeclare a disclosure? No. I'll ask everyone to please join me in a moment of quiet contemplation. Thank you. We'll move on to the public forum. There are 3 items for which there are registered speakers. Item 2, notice of motion Cooks River Corridor Master Plan. Item 3, Cootamundra Gundagai Council demerger success. And item 6, notice of motion parking. The first speaker for item 2 is Peter Munro of Marrickville. Peter, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Please proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I acknowledge that I'm on Gadigal land, which was never ceded. I believe the state government's Green Corridor plans as presented by the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment and the Greater Sydney Commission are inadequate. Under the guise of presenting a green grid plan, they appear to be offering mainly a stimulus for further development. Many of these inadequacies are captured in the Canterbury Bankstown Council Corridor Plan for the Cooks River, which is still under consultation. The Inner West Council has an opportunity to showcase what could be achieved along the corridor, the Cooks River Corridor riparian zone and the parklands by developing a high-quality Cooks River Corridor plan to complement the Council's master plan for Cooks River parklands. This could be done by focusing on the restoration of the natural environment, the riparian zone of the Cooks River, and the creation of habitat and passive recreation spaces in keeping with the community's express wishes. For the past 20 years, the community group, the Mudcrabs, have been active in restoration of the natural environment and the riparian zones of the Cooks River and the creation of habitat and passive recreation spaces. Our work is strongly supported and acknowledged by the community. The community has consistently expressed a strong interest in restoring natural river processes, aquatic habitats and improved water quality in the Cooks River Corridor, along with conserving and enhancing the natural environment. The development of Cooks River Corridor Plan could also assist Council to seek state government funding through metropolitan green space programs. It would also assist in increasing canopy cover and naturalisation of the Cooks River banks and tributaries and the creation of ecological linkages between existing plant. I believe this is an opportunity for Council to consolidate an overall approach to ecological restoration of the riparian zone and surrounding parklands and will encourage people to appreciate and engage with nature. It's also an opportunity for Inner West Council, as well as the other councils of the Cooks River Valley, to advocate for the introduction of water-sensitive urban design legislation through a Cooks River Corridor plan. Additionally, it could assist in developing the infrastructure needed to filter all road drains before stormwater enters the Cooks River. Without these, there will only be ever minimal improvements in the water quality of the Cooks River. The 12 existing Mudcrabs riverside bush regeneration sites along the Cooks River showcase what could be achieved along the whole Cooks River riparian zone and parklands with a strong Inner West Council River Corridor plan. Canterbury Bankstown's Cooks River Corridor plan is a good starting point, but I believe that through this motion, the Inner West Council has an opportunity to produce a Cooks River Corridor plan. I urge you to support the motion before you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks very much, Peter. The next speaker for this item is Jenny Saliba of Strathfield South.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Yes, well, the Cooks River is a jewel of this area. It runs through several LGAs, and many people are able to enjoy the benefits of being close to the river, and also, I guess, the opportunity to be caretakers of the river in some way. So the corridor plan for the Cooks River, presented by Canterbury Bankstown Council, talks about improving opportunities to recreate, relax and regenerate along the Cooks River. It talks about signage improvements and wayfinding, connections between different portions of the corridor, improved paths for walking and cycling, and improvements in park facilities. So it makes a lot of sense to me that the Inner West would like to be involved in implementing portions of that plan. And also, as Peter's referred to as well, producing an input into enhancing the plan as it exists now. And I think Peter's recovered many of the opportunities that have been missed in the current version of the plan. So in particular, natural places, regeneration of natural environments, and also the aquatic environment. Also, people like to recreate and to regenerate in areas that are free of litter, so litter reduction targets have a really good place in this plan as well. And also water management, and I think Peter's spoken to that as well. But beyond water management itself, good water management will also improve opportunities for on-water recreation as well as on-land recreation in the corridor. So, yeah, I support the idea of a coordinated plan along the Cooks River and also coordinated implementation. To do otherwise doesn't make a lot of sense because there are multiple LGAs along the length of the Cooks River. So fortunately, we already have a structure where cooperation can easily be activated through the Cooks River Alliance, which also includes Sydney Water. And I think that is a good starting point potentially for having a greater opportunity to coordinate between the councils and Sydney Water. And so the production finally of a good corridor plan, I think, is a good starting point. But we also do need to consider, of course, that whatever is in the catchment more broadly ends up in the river at some point, be it water or litter, and also the people who enjoy the catchment. So I think an excellent corridor plan is a starting point for a piece of work, which would be a catchment plan for the Cooks River catchment more broadly. And that will give us greater opportunities again to be good caretakers of this catchment that we live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. The next item is item 3, and the first speaker is Glenn Moore of Gundagai. Glenn, are you there?
Yeah, thank you very much for allowing me to speak for the motion tonight. As you would be aware, the Gundagai-Cootamundra Council is to be demerged after a 6-year battle. I think it's fair to say that...
Sorry, Glenn, can I ask, are you representing the council?
I'm representing a community group that has fought for 6 years to, alongside council, to achieve this end.
Please proceed.
I'd like to support the motion. I'd just like to say that you've got to be aware of the impact of what mergers have had on communities. Certainly, I realise that our demographics are very different, but I think you should look very closely at the social and cultural issues of your community and the mental health issues that have arisen since the demerger. It came out very strongly in our Boundaries Commission inquiry that those 3 issues played a major part in achieving a demerger. Certainly the finances, like most merged councils, are in a terrible mess, and after the rate embargo that was imposed when the demerger happened, we now find a 53% rate increase just to keep ourselves solvent. So there's a lot of work gone into this, and I would strongly urge council to consider what the community wants, because that's what local government's all about. From where I sit, it's not about politics, it's about working for your community and listening to your residents and ratepayers and trying to achieve their aims. Sometimes decisions made by government are so bad that you've just got to fight. And that's what we chose to do. It's been a long battle, but we've got there, and hopefully it'll allow others with a similar intent to achieve the same. The section of the Local Government Act that we have achieved a demerger under allows the government to fund that demerger. We're still waiting on the Minister to provide us with a process, and we're very anxious to find out what that process is. We want it to be fair and equitable to everyone involved, and I'm sure that if the Minister uses some common sense, then that's what will happen. It's important that if Council follows this path, and I would sincerely hope that they do, if they're listening to their ratepayers, that I believe a 62% vote for demerger was held recently. So I would hope that they listen and they act on that. It's important that you follow the process set out under the Act. The first thing is the resolution of Council, and the second thing is a report, a business case that has to be completely independent, without the involvement of local staff or councillors. It's got to be an independent body that prepares that. I can say to you that...
Glenn, I'll ask you to conclude your remarks.
Sorry?
Your time has expired, so I'll ask you to conclude your remarks.
Okay, look, I'd just like to repeat that listening to residents and ratepayers is the primary function of Council, and I speak for the motion of Councillor Langford, and I hope that your area can achieve a demerger if that's the desire of the residents and ratepayers. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Glenn. Can I just ask one question before we move on to the next speaker? You mentioned the funding for the demerger. What's the dollar figure that the Minister has committed to as of now to pay for the demerger?
We have no commitment from the Minister on a dollar figure or a process.
Okay.
We're waiting on that.
Thanks for that. Next speaker, Kate Murphy of Tempe. Kate, are you there?
Can you hear me? Can
Yes.
you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so I've come in late. Look, I just wanted to speak so I could encourage Inner West Council to use as a model, you know, the process, the way Cootamundra Gundagai Council have approached demerger. I just wanted to remind Council that 63% of the residents of the Inner West Council have voted for demerger. In my personal view is that it's been a complete failure. You know, there's been a loss of corporate memory. You can notice it I find in interactions with council, and I think many residents find the same thing. It's impossible for councillors to care for such a huge area with such diverse needs. I mean, you know, East Balmain is different to Tempe or Marrickville as, you know, one country to another. So, yeah, my main reason also, I was so disappointed that the business case put forward by council or proposed by council was just a repeat of the argument for amalgamation. And it just seems to be such a waste of money. I mean, there was even extra research went into looking at the case for demerger. So, you know, after such a waste of time and money, I hope that, you know, the success of Cootamundra and Gundagai Council, as well as looks like our neighbouring council, Canterbury, putting a case forward for demerger. I'd like to see Inner West Council listen to the views of the local residents. I don't know that I've got much more to say.
Thanks very much, Kate. And the last item for which there is a registered speaker is item 6, and that speaker is Jennifer Killen of St Peters. But we do have Bob Honeybrook, who I'm told attempted to register and is in attendance here. Bob, would you like to address the item?
Hi. My name is Bob Honeybrook. I live in 52 Lucy Street, Ashfield. And in recent times, house number 40 got sold, and a whole bunch of people moved in. And since they've got there, there's either busted cars or 2 or 3 trailers left in the street. They've moved some of them. When I come up tonight, 2 of them are angle parked backwards into the curb, and then there's a 14 or a 15-foot car trailer. The lady in number 42 has not been able to put her car in her driveway since these other mobs moved in. They blocked her driveway with the trailer. I rang the police twice, and they passed it on to somebody else. And so at the end of it, I spoke to 2 of the aldermen, and they suggested I come up tonight and put a case to get the trailer moved, because it's not registered, and it's a bit of a piece of junk really, and they've got 2 other cars parked backwards, sticking out on a 30-degree angle from the footpath, and there's another white Mazda panel van thing that they move up and down the street. It's got half a door on the driver's side. They took the outside skin of the door off, and you can see the window liners and all the crap, and they moved that round a bit. So I tried the police. They said, nah, they can't do anything. I rang the cops twice, 3 times I think, and no, they actually come down yesterday or the day before. They drove down the street, made a U-turn, drove up the other street, parked and had a look at the mess and drove off. That's the only thing that's happened in about 2 months since the house was sold. So the trailers aren't registered. I'm sure one of the Mazda trucks not registered. Certainly was not drivable. And so I'm just asking on behalf of the other residents that can't get their car in their driveway to I told them I come up and have a chat. So that's about it. So we just want to get the junk out the street. They've packed rubbish up on top of all I call it rubbish, they might call it treasures, but they got it all on the roof of their cars and on the roof of the trailer. So my request is maybe the council can do something to get rid of the truck, get rid of the trailer and the truck. One truck that sits, they've got it in the driveway.
I'll ask you to conclude your remarks as your time has expired.
Right, mate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes the public forum. We'll move on to item 1, notice of motion, visit to the Footprint
Mayor.
Festival.
Please may I move a procedural motion first, a motion of urgency in relation to a motion for Local Government New South Wales. The reason for urgency is...
Just to pull you up, as you're aware, urgency motions are required to be dealt with at the conclusion of the rest of the business on the agenda. And so I'm happy to deal with that once we've dealt with the additional items that
Fine.
the meeting's been scheduled for. Councillor De Cruz?
Thank you. I'm moving a slightly amended version, replacing point 2 with motion of an amendment I've sent to Catherine. Yes. So instead of having a sister city relationship, we're talking about a community relationship. And I'd like to thank you, the Deputy Mayor, for pointing out that the council has community-to-community framework, has a relationship framework, and Councillor Atkins dug up a reference to November 2018 minutes, where council considered it along the community framework along with the multicultural policy. So hence the amendment. And I note that in 2020, we had a media release about a community-community relationship. with Eurobodalla Council following the bushfires. And I'd just like to say a little bit about Toyanth Gamir, who he has written and said thank you for to thank Council for allowing him to speak last week and let us know to let me know he will be visiting Taronga Zoo, the Pocket City Farm and National Parks and Botanical Gardens to learn about their approach to conservation and composting. He presented me with this calico bag at the Footprints Festival and He has also advised that Rashila Paria, a councillor on the Baxter 3 municipality, will be visiting Sydney in November and hopes we can share green city, good governance and sustainability tips with her. Thank you. I hope you support the motion.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Howard?
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor De Cruz, for bringing the motion. I thank and congratulate all the staff and organisations that participated in the recent Footprints Eco Festival at the Whites Creek Valley Park. The festival's impact was all the greater for having the opportunity to share knowledge with Toyanth Gamir and the Saptakoshi Environment Centre. I, for one, have very much appreciated the opportunity to learn more about Toyanth's work and thank him for attending our meeting last week. I also thank Councillor De Cruz for her amendment to point 2 of the motion, replacing the call for an establishment of a sister municipality relationship to that of a community-to-community relationship. When the multicultural policy was adopted in 2018, I've had it explained to me by staff that formalised a shift in policy direction away from establishing new sister cities to programs and approaches that foster connections and support for culturally and linguistically diverse communities locally. Among other things, the policy has resulted in really successful and recent engagements with Nepali Australians in the Inner West, including events at the Refugee Welcome Centre and with Council's Living Arts program. I look forward to the Council engaging more deeply with our wonderful Nepali Australian community, including engagement on matters of ecology.
Thank you for that. Is there any speaker against the motion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Item 2, Cooks River Corridor Master Plan.
Thank you. I have a slightly amended version of the motion. I have provided that to Catherine earlier on.
If the version that's on the screen now is the version that was tabled in the business papers or the amended version?
The amended version.
Are we able to identify the amendments?
Yes, so it's 1 and 2. So the amendments, the reason for the amendments is after consulting with various people in the community about the Cooks River plans, various plans, it was recommended that that we basically look at a catchment-wide approach. So not just Inner West, not just Canterbury Bankstown. We should all be working together across all of the councils. I understand we have the Cooks River Alliance and most councils, we have membership of that along with Canterbury Bankstown and other councils. And so my recommendation is to approach the Alliance in number 2 about developing that catchment-wide Cooks River Corridor Master Plan and involving all councils and stakeholders, including the community, Sydney Water, Transport for New South Wales, and also acknowledging that Canterbury Bankstown have done some great work in developing a draft master plan, and obviously some of that covers off the Inner West area, and that we formalise, if they do ratify that plan, that we actually work with them to ensure that elements that affect our LGA are incorporated in that. I want to thank the speakers tonight as well, Peter Munro from Mud Crabs and also Jenny Saliba for speaking to the motion.
Seconder for the motion, seconded by Councillor D'Arienzo. Do you wish to speak to it?
Only to say that I appreciate the amendment that's taken place because it was important that we work in step with the Cooks River Alliance. And that because their current strategy is out for consultation but due to be endorsed at our late October meeting, I think it's important that we follow the process where that strategic plan is endorsed first, and then this work following takes place. And given that the amendment now, puts the Cooks River Alliance as the centrepiece of the stakeholder engagement, and making sure that we have a river-wide approach, I think that this is a motion that is supported. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any speaker against the motion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Item 3, notice of motion, Cootamundra Gundagai Council demerger success.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a slight amendment to that motion as well that has been provided to the minute taker earlier on. It's clause 6, just an additional clause. And that amendment is basically recommending that prior to submitting the Inner West Council de-amalgamation business case to the Minister for Local Government, that Council organises for the document to be reviewed and analysed by an independent external local government academic who specialises in preparing local government demerger business cases. I know that that's what the Cootamundra Gundagai Council did in order to secure their successful demerger case. And I think that tonight we heard from Glenn Moore, from Gundagai Citizens for Demerger, and also from Kate Murphy, who lives in Tempe, about some of the risks that we have in terms of keeping the council merged. And I think that having independent experts there to kind of ensure that that part of the case is put forward is very important. I also want to say, congratulate the residents of Cootamundra Gundagai, because they worked for 6 years, they fought, and they really had to endure a lot of through the forced merger, and that included a lot of the things that residents across the Inner West have complained about since we had the forced merger. Including representation and dividing communities, rate rises without accompanying services potentially, and poor outcomes for local democracy. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Yeah. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, please. To quote the Cootamundra Gundagai business case, de-amalgamation is not a novel concept in the context of Australian local government. Delatite Shire, Victoria, was de-amalgamated in October 2002, and 4 Queensland councils were de-amalgamated in 2013. The de-amalgamations of Delatite and Sunshine Coast have been studied in some detail, and there is thus a good body of knowledge to draw on when decisions are made to de-amalgamate, including ways to deal with risk and allocation of assets and liabilities. The Cootamundra Gundagai de-amalgamation business case, written by local government expert Professor Joseph Drew, includes discussion of de-amalgamation procedure as well as costs, including how the transition should be managed, asset allocation, assignment of staff, and allocation of liabilities, including major contracts, how to deal with rates and fees, and potential shared services. De-amalgamation is a complex restructure, and as the Cootamundra Gundagai business case and the experience in Queensland in particular show, there need to be good change management processes, including a transition plan and possibly specific legislation to ensure that all matters can be dealt with, including allocation of contracts and other liabilities, as raised by Councillor Stevens last week. In Queensland, for instance, the Local Government De-Amalgamation Implementation Regulation 2013 includes specific provisions dealing with contracts. The Cootamundra Gundagai business case makes specific recommendations for similar regulations to be made in New South Wales. Cootamundra Gundagai business case is a clear and successful business case and an example we should follow. We need similar discussion of how de-amalgamation will be implemented and would therefore benefit from review by local government experts such as Professor Drew.
Thank you for that. Councillor Drury.
We'll all be ruined, said Hadrahan, in accents most forlorn. Outside the church ere Mass began, one frosty Sunday morn, The congregation stood about, coat collars to the ears, and talked of stock and crops and drought, as they had done for years. "It's looking crook," said Daniel O'Cook, "but gad, it's crook, my lad. For ne'er since the banks were broke has seasons been so bad." "It's dry, all right," said young O'Neill, with an astute remark. He squatted down upon his heel and chewed a piece of bark. And so around the chorus rang, "It's keeping dry, no doubt. We'll all be ruined," said Hanrahan, "before the year is out." That's a selection from a very famous Australian poem. And many of us can't relate to that and don't understand that. But we're getting an example from a region of the Cootamundra Gundagai, which is very, very different from the inner city of Sydney. I know a little bit about that region because I've been punched in the nose and taken black eyes on sports fields in both Gundagai and Cootamundra. And what I know is things are very different there to what they are in the inner city. And I think we're foolish if we don't take that into account. I also note I took the time to have a look at the splendid report of the council to
Move an extension
the
of time.
Boundaries Commission.
Councillor Scott has moved an extension of time of 2 minutes, seconded by Councillor Stevens. All those in favour? Against?
I promise not to read any more poetry in this meeting. So I had a look and I thought, wow, there's some great little cherry picking going on there. That's the thing they do in the country. They go out and pick cherries. And when I haven't read the whole Boundaries Commission report. I think Councillor Pip has. I think she's read it all. But like the bit that I read was the executive summary, and it contains some shockers. Contains a de-amalgamation of Cootamundra Gundagai Regional Council will cost so much, which will have to be paid back over a period of just over 8 years. Oof, that's a great plan. In all likelihood, a well-managed de-amalgamation will cost less upfront and reap greater savings. In all likelihood, that's what the author says. Doesn't sound very strong. My favourite bit is, a de-amalgamation will not fix the problems that currently afflict the local government area. There will still be a need for increases in rates and charges to mitigate the financial problems that the community now faces. And it would be critical for any new local government that emerge to have strict cost control. Let's face it, the report has gone from an area of the country party, National Party people, to a National Party minister who said, okay, you can separate. I know these people because they're part of my family were country party people, good old-fashioned agrarian socialists, to the T. What they're saying, and they say it in their report, the last Premier and last Minister didn't understand us, but we know you
your time has
will.
expired. Thank you for that. Councillor Scott?
Thank you.
I believe I was next.
No, I am.
No, Councillor Scott is next. Councillor
Now,
Stamos.
although I personally would not have thought that a letter to a minister of the Perrottet Liberal government congratulating them on their fine achievements was an urgent matter requiring an extraordinary meeting, here we are. Now, before we congratulate the minister, let's acknowledge, as your speaker has, that the minister has not committed to the cost of the Cootamundra demerger, nor for a hypothetical Inner West one, and has not guaranteed that she will not sack the elected representatives. And in fact, her pointed refusal to do so almost certainly indicates this is what she's going to do. If this is the business case that we are to follow, like my artistic colleague down the table, I would like to read you some quotes.
There will still be a need for an increase to rates and charges. It will be critical to any future local government to practice strict cost control for the foreseeable future. I cannot stress strongly enough that strict discipline will be required. Inevitably, de-amalgamation will involve extra work and stress for staff. And my favourite, I have discussed the matter with both the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and proposed that a new Cootamundra Council have 7 councillors and Gundagai 5. This is a significant decrease on pre-amalgamation representation. This business case acknowledges that the appointment of an undemocratic administrator will be necessary. However, to be scrupulously fair, they do think they'll be able to achieve the entire transition in 10 weeks, which, hold on, no, it's okay. Suspending democracy is okay if you think you can get it done in the summer break. Not a problem. The blithe way with which this author discusses ratepayer rises, austerity measures and increased staff workload is not an approach that we should consider instructive. There is a single paragraph discussing liabilities, which tosses off the idea that they should be allocated in proportion as far as possible, and then says the administrator will have a binding say on final allocation, as well as a binding final decision on all other transition matters in 10 weeks. I refer to Councillor Stamoulos' concern that our proposal was too detailed and that perhaps we should take the slimmed down Cootamundra approach. No.
Councillor Drury has moved an extension of time of 2 minutes, seconded by Councillor Stevens. All those in favour?
Thank you.
Against?
Because perhaps it is because critical concerns like ratepayer finances, workers' labour and democracy are given short shrift in consideration by both him and this expert. Have you read this business case? Have you? Is this what you want? I am begging you all to take this seriously. Even the report from your preferred expert outlines a bleak future. I might suggest that if you were perhaps a senior public servant, that this is not a report you would have taken seriously. Once again, I encourage all of my colleagues to act with caution and not abandon as we witness this process unfolding in real time.
Thank you for that. I might just pose a question to the mover of the motion before I go to Councillor Stamoulos. Councillor Langford, can I ask, do you support the council being put into unelected administration during the demerger process? If not, do you support the business case being submitted even without a guarantee against that? If you do support the council being put into administration, what's the period of time that you would support?
I'd like to point out that that has nothing to do with the essence of the motion that I put forward. And
Councillors are required to point of order.
Yes.
Councillors are required to answer the question put to them directly.
I don't know about that, actually.
Point of order, that's...
I'd like to ask through the chair
Sorry, Councillor Langford, just one moment. I've asked you a question that is directly related to a motion that you have tabled here tonight about the Cootamundra Gundagai business case, in which it is acknowledged in that case that the council would be put into administration. So I'm simply asking, given you've tabled this as a template for what we should do...
No, I don't.
You don't support the council being put into administration?
No, I'd rather that the council wasn't put into administration.
If I just can come
What
back
about you? What do you think?
If I can just come back to the question which I asked, if there is no commitment from the government not to put the council into unelected administration, do you support submitting a business case?
I'd rather not answer that, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Stamoulos?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and congratulations to Cootamundra Gundagai. And in fact, it was the Minister who made the comments that the merger didn't work, there weren't services improvements, there weren't the financial outcomes, and of course, the community of Cootamundra Gundagai were facing a 52% rate increase over 2 years. Now, if you call that an effective merger, and if you call that a case for merger, the community would have suffered with a 52% rate increase. And one thing I do know, the incomes are very different down south than what they are here in the inner parts of Sydney. They would suffer with those increases. It did not deliver. The other thing that we haven't discussed is that to support the mergers continuing in 3 councils in the city area of Sydney, rates have increased by more than 30%. And we know that the Inner West, I don't think there's a week goes by without the Inner West is asking for money. Sometimes 24 million, sometimes 25 million, sometimes 50 million. We know we need money. And I think our public is well aware that if we stay merged, there is a huge risk of a rate increase. In fact, let me add, fellow councillors, if we even have half the increase of the other city councils that have pushed through, because the minister will approve it. The minister will approve these rates. They've been approved. So if we even have half the increase, that will be a $400 million impost on our community. A 15% rate increase will be a $400 million impost on our community over 20 years. Why didn't we suggest or ask that in the questions to the people? Would you suffer a huge rate increase? We didn't ask our people that. We didn't validate the data.
Stamoulis,
We
your
did
time
not
has
validate
expired.
the data
Councillor
before we
Stamoulis, your
put the
time has
questionnaire
expired.
out, Mr.
I'd like
Mayor.
to move an
Councillor-
extension of 2 minutes, please.
Just a moment, Councillor Shetty. Councillor Stamoulis, your time had expired. I'd asked you to desist from interjecting and you weren't able to do so. I'll warn you that I will need to keep the meeting in order. Separate to that, Councillor Shetty is moving an extension of time of 2 minutes, which I personally don't support and will vote against. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Griffiths. All those in favour?
Point of order, that needs to be moved when the councillor is speaking, not after the 2 minutes.
In the interests of collegiality, I'll allow it to be put. All those in favour? All those against? That has been defeated. Is there any further discussion? We've had 2 speakers for and 2 speakers against. No? I'll go to Councillor Langford for a right of reply.
Thank you, everyone, for the discussion and for the comments. Yeah, I'd like to say that I think that the essence of the motion is to congratulate and acknowledge Cootamundra Gundagai residents and campaigners for the success in having a successful business case accepted by the minister, and with further detail to come. We don't support putting council into administration, and we think that a good business case should actually make the case for a transition plan which does not include administration. So just to make that clear, I think that we should not be making light or making mockery of the 62.5% of residents who supported the de-amalgamation, and we really need to be putting the community first and not politics first. I think that having local government is all about local voices and local democracy, and what we've seen is a diminishment of those under the merged council. Thank you. Thank you.
Please proceed.
I think that the motion really speaks for itself, and it's time that the state government and Transport for New South Wales will stop treating Tempe residents as second-class citizens. It's completely inexcusable that that station is inaccessible the way it is at the moment. It's been about 2 years since the entrance has been of the station has been shifted halfway down the platform and in the middle of the car park, where residents have to walk through long distances, people with prams, people with bikes. I was there on the weekend watching all these people carrying their bikes all the way down these long set of stairs. We heard last week from local resident David Sampson about how he and other residents have been inconvenienced, and the station is really in a terrible state. So really the onus is on the state government to fix this and to make the station accessible as soon as possible. Council really needs to be lobbying on behalf of its residents, and I think that you would not see this situation in a blue ribbon seat anywhere else, and it's just not good enough. So I commend you to support this motion, and hopefully we can turn this situation around soon.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Howard?
Thank you. I just have a small amendment that I'd circulated previously. Yeah, Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Langford, for this important motion. Residents on both sides of Tempe Station are furious that the stairs remain out of action after a year and a half of being closed for repairs. Earlier this year, the member for Summerhill asked a question to the Minister for Transport about the issue in Parliament, and this was the response. Minister Elliott said, "The current works at Tempe Station are focused on the repair and maintenance of the footbridge and stairs. The stairs have been closed from April 2021 and are expected to conclude mid-2023, subject to availability of resources and track access. Yes, shockingly, the stairs are not due to open for at least another 8 months." It says everything about what the Liberal state government thinks about accessibility at our stations and everything about how they feel about local infrastructure in the Inner West. I offered the small amendment to the motion to acknowledge the long-standing campaign by Tempe residents to have the station included in the Transport Access Program. I think that's important because the stairs need to be fixed, yes, but we need for the station and all stations across the Inner West, including Lewisham Station, to be made fully accessible for people with disability, parents with prams, and older people in our community. That includes the installation of lifts at Tempe Station, and I acknowledge and thank the Tempe community for their work on this. I do also acknowledge that Ron Honig, the member for Heffron, has been providing ongoing advocacy both on the issues of the stairs and for a full upgrade of the station. I agree with Councillor Langford that fixing the stairs would be an excellent start, but hope that we will continue to push for all of our stations across the Inner West to be given a full upgrade. This is about human rights.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Next item, support for Walleye Creek Regional Park.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I was approached by the Walleye Creek Preservation Society requesting support from council with this motion. I'm sure, I know we had Peter Stevens and Gina Svolis from Walleye Creek Preservation Society speak to the motion last week. It really is a no-brainer that the park needs to be gazetted into a regional park so that it can actually have greater protection, better funding, and you know, that it's there for generations to come. I'm sure many of us have enjoyed visiting Walleye Creek and walking through the area, particularly during COVID, but just about any other time. We're incredibly lucky to have such beautiful bushland so close by. So really, I probably don't need to say much more, but commend the motion to you and ask that council supports and writes to the minister to support the regional park going ahead. It's been, I think, about 20 years or something ridiculous that it's been discussed and campaigned for. So it's about time that it was done. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Howard will second the motion.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you. And thank you again to Councillor Langford for the motion. One of the greatest gifts we can give to future generations is the cultivation and preservation of urban wild places. The Walleye Creek Regional Park is such a place. Unique, precious bushland right in the heart of our bustling city. The park is home to cormorants, darters, blue wrens and finches. It's a rich haven for biodiversity right on our doorstep and provides a unique opportunity for respite, adventure and immersion in nature. Labor has long supported the park since it was established in '98 by then Premier Bob Carr. The member for Canterbury has been a fierce advocate, including fighting for remediation and transfer of land in 2018 to form part of the park and fighting alongside residents and the Walleye Creek Preservation Society to oppose the construction of an odour control unit. Sophie has advocated strongly for the parklands to be considered for transfer under national parks, which affords even greater protections for biodiversity, flora and fauna. As the background to the motion states, in order to complete the park, 4 remaining plots of private land need to be acquired. They are zoned as regional open space and are inaccessible to the owners due to the steep cliff face that traces the creek. Completing the park is an act of regional significance and would be of immense benefit to residents of the Inner West. I'm pleased to support the motion.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Item 6, parking.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that, thanks. I'm sure that like Councillor Langford and I, Councillor De Cruz and Councillor Shetty, we've all had complaints from people like Bob Honeybrook about illegal parking, whether it's dangerous because it blocks views of traffic, or cars have mounted the footpaths, or simply creating serious inconvenience for residents. I had one conversation with an older woman who is often unable to attend events because people park in her narrow street in such a way she's unable to get her car out of her garage. She's reported it to council on numerous occasions, but rangers can't always get to the location quickly. We can't allow parking issues to increase the isolation felt by older people who live alone. There are other examples of back lanes behind King Street where no parking signs are painted over so that claims are able to be made that the people parking aren't aware of restrictions, again resulting in people unable to get out of their garages and homes and dangerously park cars in narrow lanes. Cars parked wholly or partially on footpaths, even where it's across people's own driveways, affect accessibility, particularly for people with disabilities, older people and parents or carers with prams. Since COVID, it seems many people are still using their cars in preference to public transport and looking for parking for which they don't need to pay. Residents are becoming increasingly frustrated, and the last thing we want is people taking things into their own hands. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Smith. Do you wish to speak to it? Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion? I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Item 7, Balmain Town Hall and Civic Precinct Planning. I'll refrain from speaking and address any questions.
I'll second the motion and waive my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion? Councillor Shetty.
Thanks. It's great to see this motion to establish a working group for the Balmain Town Hall precinct. It's obviously a really important precinct for our community, and the Balmain Town Hall has been neglected for too long. I'd like to move an amendment to change the wording of point 2, which is just on the screen. It's just to remove the expression of interest part of that point 2. I think it's really important that we recognise how significant this precinct is to the local community, and in doing so should appreciate that we need to listen to a broad range of views about its future. My concern about an expression of interest process is that it may work to prevent the participation of some people, as it's not as accessible for residents to contribute if they need to go through a process to be vetted or approved to be part of a working group. An EOI process could make it more difficult for people that might not be confident with technology, or for those who might feel that they don't have relevant experience, or they might be intimidated by an EOI process, and may prevent more marginalised groups from participating. So whilst I welcome a working group on this issue, we must ensure it is open and accessible for all walks to contribute and have their say. The first open public forum that was run about the Town Hall precinct had a reasonable turnout and was not an unwieldy enough group that we should anticipate difficulty in listening to all of the views of those who attended, as well as any others who might have an interest in the future of this precinct. So I hope you'll accept that amendment.
I don't accept the amendment. I think the concerns about accessibility can be addressed through the terms of reference. An expression of interest process is a good and transparent way for council to establish a new working group. I was in attendance and chaired the forum that Councillor Shetty has referred to, and I can tell you that the 50 to 100 people who attended would not be a manageable way to conduct a working group or party, and I've sought advice from council officers who concur with that. So, seconded by Councillor Stamoulis. We'll put that amendment. All those in favour? All those against? Councillor Stamoulis, are you abstaining? You didn't raise your hand. I'll just recommit the vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's been defeated. I'll refrain from making a right of reply. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Item 8, Balmain Sailing Club. I'll refrain from speaking. I'll put the motion.
I'll second that and waive the right to speak.
Seconded by Councillor Scott. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion?
I'd like to speak, thanks.
Councillor Shetty.
I'd like to thank the Balmain Sailing Club for their contribution to the community over many, many years. This proposal has merit, and as such, I'm obviously happy to support it. I would like to raise my concerns about the process of allocating funding of this magnitude to a sporting club without a grants funding process. While I'm supportive of the Sailing Club, I am concerned that it may be seen as one club being treated more favourably than other local sporting clubs, who are all deserving and who all do very important work in our community. I think it's appropriate to ensure that any other clubs be given similar opportunities to obtain funding from council through a grants process, so that each application for funding can be assessed assessed on its merit and on a needs basis. So whilst I am supportive of the Balmain Sailing Club, I find this method of funding to be highly unusual and just want that to be noted. Thanks.
Well, councillor Shetty, I'll just address that in a right of reply. Is there anybody who wishes to speak against the motion? Okay. If you don't support the motion, don't vote for it. But you can't vote for the motion and then say, I want to state for the record that I don't support the motion. I'll note you can, but it's hypocritical and incongruous. And I'll note that councillor Shetty, for example, just recently has started an online campaign for the men's shed in Leichhardt to be transferred into a premises in Callum Park, which may well be a good idea, but there's been no...
Point of
EOI
order, Mayor.
process.
That's not relevant.
I rule that it is relevant. There's been no EOI process. No sports club's been able to apply for that process.
Point of order, Mayor. That's irrelevant. They're already supported by the
Councillor Shetty.
by the
Councillor
council.
Shetty, point of order. You need to let the Mayor speak without being interrupted.
I'll ask you to refrain from interjecting or I'll have to warn you. So it's a bit rich to be criticised for a process in which I'm transparently tabling a motion at council with the advice of council officers after receiving a request from a local community organisation. I confirm that councillor Shetty has not even made a request of council officers for the men's shed to be transferred into Callum Park without an EOI through a subleasing arrangement. I don't criticise that, but I just note that it is incongruous with the criticism that has just been made. And I look forward to meeting with the men's shed through a transparent process in which all community organisations are able to access the same sort of support. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? All those against? That has been carried unanimously. Councillor Atkins.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move as a matter of procedure an urgency motion for consideration of a motion to submit a motion to the Local Government New South Wales annual conference.
It requires a resolution of the council to do such as well, which will be moved by councillor Atkins, seconded by councillor Griffiths. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. I don't believe there is any disagreement with the substance of the motion, so if you're okay, councillor Atkins, I'll just put it and we can conclude the meeting. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. I declare the meeting closed. I'll reopen the meeting and recommit the vote. Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by councillor De Cruz. Do you wish to speak to it? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. I declare the meeting closed at 7:29. Sorry, before we proceed, can I ask that whether to the private briefing session, can I ask whether the broadcast has been discontinued?